traitor deserves worse than prison." The bailiff slammed Lieutenant Colonel Alexis Harper's face against the freezing marble floor, her hard-won medals clinking as if mocking her. Judge Franklin Wells looked on without flinching, his expression carved from stone. At the prosecution's table, Sandra Blackwell's lips curled into a predator's smile, the zip ties carved into Harper's dark skin. From the gallery, a hiss cut through the murmurs. "Terrorist lover!" Security Officer Miller ground his boot into her ankle. "Stay down where you belong." But Harper's eyes burned defiance. She wasn't broken. She was calculating, waiting. The double doors burst open. Silence swallowed the courtroom as Admiral James Sullivan strode in, 4 silver stars gleaming under the lights. Conversations died mid-whisper. Why would an admiral step into a civilian courtroom for a supposedly disgraced sniper? Hours earlier, Harper had walked into the courthouse in plain clothes, facing the gauntlet. Cameras flashed like gunfire. Headlines screamed her name: military sniper charged with treason. While white defendants breezed through security with lazy checks, Harper was scanned twice. "Arms up!" the guard barked. Her face stayed unreadable, but her mind recorded every detail. The extra guards posted at the doors, the quick sideways glances, the subtle recoil of strangers shifting away from her. Judge Wells leafed through her file, lips tightening. His reputation for crushing military defendants was well known. He exchanged a sharp glance with prosecutor Sandra Blackwell, an old colleague, same old agenda. Her attorney, Daniel Green, shuffled nervously beside her. "They've stacked the deck," he whispered. Harper didn't flinch. Her SEAL discipline held her posture straight, her gaze steady, every movement controlled. Officer Miller shadowed her like a hunting dog. When she asked for water, he ignored her. Minutes later, a white male defendant made the same request, and Miller brought him a cup without hesitation. Blackwell rose, voice sharp as a blade. "The defendant betrayed her country," she declared, "a decorated operator who violated sacred trust." Her words dripped with coded venom, painting Harper as foreign, suspect, never fully American. From the back row, 3 men in dark suits studied Harper. Military posture, eyes sharp, not reporters, not lawyers. One spoke quietly into his sleeve after locking eyes with her. Harper betrayed nothing, but she noticed everything. "Exhibit A." Blackwell flourished a stack of papers. Emails, she claimed, that proved Harper had leaked classified reports of civilian casualties. Harper leaned forward, eyes scanning every line. Wrong timestamps, wrong headers, impossible. "Lieutenant Colonel Harper violated her oath," Blackwell pressed. She lifted a flash drive like a holy relic. "Evidence of direct communication with foreign operatives." Green rose, sweating. "Your Honor, we never received this evidence in discovery." "Dismissed," Judge Wells barked, waving him down. "National security makes allowances." "That's not my data," Harper snapped. "The mission timeline proves—" The gavel slammed. "Silence! You speak only when addressed." Miller stepped closer, hand on his taser. "Need to restrain her, Your Honor." Green's hand trembled as he touched Harper's arm. "Easy. Let me talk." Blackwell leaned toward the bench, dropping her voice, but not enough to hide her malice. "Your Honor, we believe the defendant concealed activities overseas. Request to treat her as hostile." Granted. Every instinct in Harper's body came alive. Her mind mapped the exits, counted security placements, clocked guard stances. She returned her gaze to the suited men at the back. One of them whispered into his sleeve again, watching, waiting, and so was she. Lieutenant Colonel Alexis Harper caught Officer Miller watching her scan the room. His hand tightened on his weapon, and a slight smile curved his lips. The judge's clerk shifted uncomfortably, avoiding everyone's gaze. The court reporter's fingers froze for half a beat when Sandra Blackwell mentioned classified evidence. Tiny cracks in the performance. Inconsistencies others dismissed, Alexis Harper gathered like intel. The official story didn't fit. On the courtroom monitors, images appeared. Alexis Harper with her SEAL team, the only woman in combat gear, standing straight among men. Blackwell's voice oozed with insinuation. That must have created pressure to prove yourself. "Objection, Your Honor," Daniel Green interrupted. "Establishing motive," Blackwell countered smoothly. Judge Franklin Wells nodded. "Allowed." Alexis Harper's jaw tightened, the only outward sign she registered the insult. Blackwell raised performance reviews, reading select lines, difficulty following orders, tendency to question parameters. "Is that why you leaked classified information, Lieutenant Colonel?" Blackwell asked, eyes cold. "To undermine the authority that refused to recognize your talents?" Alexis Harper met her gaze squarely. Those notes were about tactical improvements later adopted as standard procedure. Blackwell smiled without warmth. "Yet you were passed over for promotion twice." "The hands of a sniper," Blackwell announced. "Hands that have taken lives. Hands that typed messages to journalists betraying this nation." Miller edged closer, hand on his weapon, eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Your Honor, the defendant is a security risk. She should be restrained." Judge Wells didn't hesitate. "Granted." Miller grabbed Alexis Harper's wrist, wrenching it back with unnecessary force. Plastic bit into her skin. His breath was hot against her ear. "Not so tough now," he whispered. The gallery murmured. Someone laughed under their breath. Judge Wells's satisfied nod, Blackwell's smug smile, the three men in the back row trading looks. The spectacle was working. Miller loomed over her, savoring his victory pose. A buzz lit his phone. For a fraction of a second, Alexis Harper glimpsed a message. "Make sure she goes down today. Judge is on board. Comfortable." Then the screen vanished back into his pocket. During recess, Alexis Harper sat in a holding room, wrists raw, fluorescent lights buzzing above. She closed her eyes, breathing deep with SEAL discipline. 4 counts in, hold, 6 out. Memories rose sharp. Kandahar, her spotter whispering coordinates, a shot saving hostages. Admiral James Sullivan's words after she prevented civilian deaths. "Sometimes doing right means standing alone. True courage isn't blind obedience." The door opened. Miller entered, scrolling through that same phone, smirk carved into his face. "Get used to it. Traitors don't get comfort." Alexis Harper didn't respond. She logged the key card on his belt, the radio frequency on his shoulder unit, the way he favored his right side. Every detail mattered. With sniper's precision, she typed a short, sharp message. "Fal N compromised." She hit send. Now all she could do was wait, knowing the wrong people were already listening and the right ones needed to hear it first. The beacon buzzed once in Alexis's palm. Confirmation. Her personal authentication code sealed the transmission. Whoever received it would know. This was her. Footsteps in the hall. Alexis repositioned, concealing her half-freed hand and slipping the device into her boot. Daniel entered, shoulders slumped, tie askew, hair mussed from nervous fingers. He looked like a man who had already lost the war. "They're building a strong case," he muttered. "The judge is biased. Challenging him will only make things worse." Alexis's composure didn't waver. "I need you to do something very specific when we return." Daniel leaned closer. She whispered fast, precise instructions. His eyes widened. "That's Unusual. You're certain? 100%, Alexis said. Her voice was calm, iron hidden in silk. Daniel nodded slowly, confusion giving way to curiosity. All right, I'll follow your lead. What exactly had Alexis told him? And who had picked up her emergency message? Court resumed under a taut hush. Alexis sat straight-backed at the defense table, restraints biting her wrists. Miller planted himself behind her chair like a shadow eager to swallow her whole. Sandra introduced the next witness, a man in a crisp suit with DIA credentials. The court calls Nathan Phillips, intelligence analyst. Phillips carried the confidence of someone used to briefing generals. 15 years in signals intelligence, specialized in comms and data security. He adjusted his tie before delivering the line rehearsed too perfectly. The documents Lieutenant Commander Alexis Harper leaked contained operational details that compromise personnel and methods. The damage is severe and ongoing. Alexis listened closely, her mind razor-sharp. Phillips mispronounced acronyms, used outdated lingo, wrong era, wrong systems, amateur tells in a man claiming expertise. She leaned toward Daniel, whispering rapid instructions. He rose to cross-examine, nerves visible but steadied by her words. Mr. Phillips, you testified about signal intelligence protocols. Could you explain specifically how the ZX440 encryption system integrates with SATM Delta channels? A hesitation. Barely half a beat, but Alexis clocked it. I'm not at liberty to discuss classified systems, Phillips dodged. Daniel pressed, firmer now. But you claimed my client leaked details about those systems. How can you assess damage if you don't understand them? Phillips faltered, eyes flicking to Sandra for rescue. Objection, Sandra snapped. National security protocols. Judge Wells barely hesitated. Sustained. Move on. Daniel nodded. One last question. When was the ZX440 system first deployed in Middle Eastern operations? Phillips's voice was confident. Too confident. 3 years ago, in the Hormuz security corridor. Daniel inclined his head slightly. Thank you. No further questions. Alexis's face didn't change, but in her eyes, victory flashed like lightning. The ZX440 system didn't exist. His testimony was pure fabrication. Behind her, Miller's radio hissed with static. He turned, posture tightening, and murmured into his mic. Within moments, extra officers entered, taking positions at the exits. Judge Wells's eyes narrowed. He'd noticed the security shuffle, too. Why had courthouse security suddenly doubled? What had Miller heard that rattled him? Sandra smoothed her jacket, feigning composure. The prosecution calls Captain Thomas Reynolds. A Navy officer approached the stand, uniform precise, chest gleaming with ribbons. He moved with rigid authority, standing at perfect attention before sitting. Captain Reynolds, Sandra said smoothly, state your relationship to the defendant. I served as Lieutenant Commander Alexis Harper, A.S. Commanding Officer during Operation Desert Shield and subsequent deployments, he replied. And describe Alexis's behavior during these operations. Initially exemplary, Reynolds said crisply, but later she became erratic. She questioned orders. She spent unusual amounts of time communicating off-channel. Daniel shot to his feet. Objection! Your Honor, my client's personnel file shows she received accommodation for her actions during this operation. Judge Wells shifts in his seat, eyes darting to the increased security presence. The commendation doesn't preclude problematic behavior. Overruled. Captain Thomas Reynolds continues describing how Alexis allegedly accessed classified files without authorization. She spent hours alone with intelligence data that exceeded her clearance level. Alexis studies Reynolds carefully. His uniform fits impeccably, too perfect, like it's rarely worn. His posture mimics military bearing rather than embodying it. Most telling, he avoids eye contact with her completely. His ribbons include medals for operations she knows occurred after his supposed command ended. She whispers to her attorney, who stands. "Captain Reynolds, could you state your service number for the record?" "Objection." Prosecutor Charlotte Blackwell interrupts sharply. "Irrelevant and potentially compromising operational security." "Sustained," Judge Wells rules immediately. Outside the courtroom, voices raise in the hallway. Officer Miller's radio crackles again. His face pales as he listens to the message. He positions himself closer to the door, speaking urgently into his radio. Following Alexis's instructions, her attorney addresses the judge. "Your Honor, I request a brief recess to review new evidence that has just been made available to the defense." Judge Wells hesitates, glancing at the commotion developing outside his courtroom. "The court will take 15 minutes. As people rise, Alexis notices the 3 men from the back row have vanished. Reynolds quickly exits through a side door, avoiding the main hallway. Miller positions himself by the door, hand on his weapon, speaking urgently into his radio. What is causing the commotion outside? And why has the fake captain disappeared during the recess? Court reconvenes with a shifted atmosphere. New faces occupy the gallery. Several military personnel in formal dress uniforms sit with perfect posture in the back rows. Their presence draws curious glances from other spectators. Judge Wells enters looking flustered, his typical commanding presence diminished by frequent glances toward the uniformed observers. Charlotte Blackwell appears unsettled but continues her performance. The prosecution presents digital evidence of the defendant's communications with journalists. She signals for the courtroom monitors to display a series of email screenshots. These messages clearly show the defendant's intent to undermine national security. Charlotte insists, highlighting timestamps and headers. Lieutenant Commander Alexis Harper sent operational details to reporter Thomas Wade on 3 separate occasions. Alexis's attorney rises. "Your Honor, I request permission to approach the evidence." Judge Wells hesitates, eyes flicking toward the military observers, then nods. "Proceed." Green examines the displayed emails following Alexis's earlier instructions. "Your Honor, I'd like to examine the metadata of these communications." Charlotte shifts her weight. "The technical details aren't relevant to the content, which is clearly treasonous." "The defense has the right to examine evidence authenticity," Green counters with newfound confidence. Judge Wells allows it, watching the military observers from the corner of his eye. Green points to specific irregularities in the headers and routing information. These messages show clear signs of digital manipulation. The SMTP headers contain impossible routing paths. Charlotte dismisses the concern with a wave. "The defendant is trained in cyber operations. She could have altered the data herself to create plausible deniability." Green produces a document from his briefcase. "I've subpoenaed Lieutenant Commander Alexis Harper's deployment records. She was in a classified location with no internet access when these messages were allegedly sent." Judge Wells studies the document, brow furrowed. "This appears to be properly authorized, but it contradicts the prosecution's timeline." Charlotte's voice rises. "Your Honor, this document could be falsified. I move to have the defendant taken into custody immediately as a flight risk while we authenticate these records." Judge Wells nods quickly. "Motion granted. The defendant will be remanded to custody." Officer Miller approaches Alexis with unusual aggression, drawing his handcuffs. "On your feet." The military observers in the gallery exchange meaningful glances. Miller grabs Alexis's arm. "You're done, Lieutenant." As he pulls her to her feet, Alexis notices movement at the courtroom doors. A flash of gold braid, a military insignia. Officer Miller forces Alexis to the floor with brutal efficiency. He plants his knee in her back, pressing her cheek against the cold tile. "Hands behind your back," Miller growls, yanking her arms roughly. The zip ties bite deeper. Miller tightens them until Alexis's fingers begin to tingle from restricted circulation. "Traitors getting what they deserve," he mutters loud enough for the front row to hear. The courtroom doors burst open with military precision. Admiral James Sullivan enters, 4 silver stars gleaming on his shoulders. 6 military police officers flank him, moving with disciplined purpose into the room. The gallery falls into stunned silence. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" Judge Wells demands, face flushing red. Admiral Sullivan approaches the bench with measured steps. His voice carries the weight of command. "I am Admiral James Sullivan, Director of Naval Intelligence. This court is now witness to a matter of national security." Miller attempts to pull Alexis to her feet, but 2 military police intercept him. "Thomas Miller, you are being detained on suspicion of espionage and conspiracy against the United States." The courtroom erupts in confusion. Spectators rise from their seats. Reporters fumble for their phones. Judge Wells bangs his gavel repeatedly. "Order. I demand order." Admiral Sullivan turns toward the bench. "Judge Franklin Wells and Prosecutor Charlotte Blackwell, you are both named in a federal investigation into obstruction of justice and conspiracy against the United States." Military police move toward the bench and prosecutor's table. Charlotte drops her papers, face draining of color. Alexis remains composed as a female officer cuts her restraints. She rises to her feet, rubbing circulation back into her wrists. Admiral Sullivan addresses the stunned courtroom. Lieutenant Commander Alexis Harper is an active-duty intelligence officer conducting a sanctioned counterintelligence operation. Operation Falconer has been tracking a network of compromised officials selling classified information for the past 18 months. The 3 men who had been observing from the gallery reappear, now flanked by additional agents. One holds up FBI credentials. "Judge Wells," Admiral Sullivan continues, "your court was selected as the vehicle to discredit Lieutenant Commander Harper before she could complete her investigation." Wells sputters, "This is outrageous. I'm a federal judge." An FBI agent interjects, presenting documents. "Who has received substantial deposits to offshore accounts, coinciding with key rulings in national security cases." Admiral Sullivan turns to Alexis. "Lieutenant Commander, please brief the court on your actual assignment." Alexis steps forward, every inch the elite operator she is. Her voice carries authority that silences the room. "For the past year, I've been part of a joint task force investigating information leaks that compromised 3 overseas operations and resulted in the deaths of American personnel." She gestures toward Miller and the now detained fake Captain Reynolds. "These individuals are part of a network selling military intelligence to foreign interests. Judge Wells and Prosecutor Charlotte Blackwell were manipulated into expediting this sham trial to discredit me before I could complete my report." Alexis produces the small device from her shoe. This emergency beacon contains documented evidence of their communications and financial transactions. The transmission was received by Naval Intelligence 37 minutes ago. The FBI agents step forward. "We've been monitoring all communications in and out of this courthouse," one explains. "The evidence is substantial and conclusive." Judge Wells rises from his seat. "I had no knowledge of any conspiracy. I was simply following proper judicial procedure based on evidence presented to my court." Charlotte frantically gathers her scattered files. "This is outrageous. I was pursuing a legitimate case based on evidence provided through official channels." Alexis approaches Charlotte calmly. "The evidence was provided by Officer Miller through channels manipulated to appear official. Your eagerness to prosecute blinded you to obvious inconsistencies that any diligent prosecutor would have questioned." Admiral Sullivan addresses the stunned courtroom. Lieutenant Commander Alexis is one of the Navy's most decorated special operators, with 3 distinguished service medals and a Silver Star. Her apparent leak was carefully crafted disinformation designed to flush out the actual conspirators, Admiral Sullivan explains. Miller struggles against his restraints. "She's lying. She's the one who—" "Silence him," Admiral Sullivan orders. A military police officer clamps a hand over Miller's mouth. As federal agents secure the courtroom, one of them examines Miller's phone. His eyes widen at what he discovers. What crucial evidence is about to be revealed? Within minutes, the courthouse transforms into a secured federal crime scene. FBI agents in windbreakers collect evidence while military intelligence officers establish a command post in the jury deliberation room. Yellow tape cordons off hallways. Armed guards check credentials at every entry point. Lieutenant Commander Alexis confers with Admiral Sullivan and 3 intelligence officials in a secured conference room. Screens display surveillance footage, financial records, and communication logs. The evidence creates a complex web of connections spanning multiple agencies and foreign contacts, Alexis explains, pointing to a digital map showing links between Miller, the fake Captain Reynolds, and officials in 3 government agencies. They've been selling operational details that compromised missions and endangered personnel. Admiral Sullivan studies the network diagram. How did you identify Miller as the focal point? Pattern recognition, Alexis responds, bringing up a timeline on the main screen. 3 mission compromises over 18 months. Miller had access to preliminary briefings for each one through his security clearance at the courthouse. He vetted visiting military personnel. She highlights financial records. Offshore deposits followed each information leak. The money trail led to shell companies registered to aliases used by known foreign agents. In a separate room, Judge Wells faces FBI investigators. The once distinguished jurist now looks small beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. I had no direct knowledge of any conspiracy, Wells insists, voice strained. My rulings were based on the evidence presented, standard judicial procedure. The lead investigator slides several documents across the table. These are records of unusual deposits to your Cayman Islands accounts. Each coincides with key rulings in cases involving classified information. Wells's face pales as he stares at the evidence. Those funds were from legitimate investments through a shell company connected to foreign intelligence services, the agent finishes. His tone makes it clear he doesn't expect an answer. 2 doors down, Charlotte undergoes separate questioning. Her carefully constructed composure has crumbled. I was following orders from the Justice Department to prioritize this case, Charlotte claims, arms crossed defensively. Investigators produce emails showing Charlotte had been in contact with Miller prior to the case assignment, messages discussing how to handle the Alexis situation, and references to making sure she goes down. These communications predated any official case assignment, the investigator notes. Care to explain? Charlotte's lips press into a thin line. I want to speak with my attorney. In the courthouse's main conference room, Admiral Sullivan addresses a closed session of military and justice officials. Screens display evidence from Alexis's operation. This investigation has revealed systemic vulnerabilities in how we handle classified information and legal proceedings involving intelligence personnel, the Admiral explains. Lieutenant Commander Alexis's operation was specifically designed to identify these weaknesses. Alexis steps forward, presenting the full scope of her findings. 18 months of meticulous documentation reveals how Miller and his associates exploited biases and procedural loopholes to target military personnel who threatened their operation. They specifically targeted women and minorities in the special operations community, Alexis explains, displaying personnel files of previous victims. People whose complaints about discrimination might be dismissed as excuses for poor performance. She brings up transcripts of Miller's communications with associates. They selected targets they believed would be less credible if they raised concerns. A Justice Department official raises her hand. How extensive is this network? Alexis displays a comprehensive organization chart. 27 confirmed individuals across multiple agencies. 15 additional persons of interest still under investigation. Outside the courthouse, media vans line the street. Reporters broadcast live updates about major developments in what they're calling a courthouse coup. Social media explodes with partial information and speculation. The FBI director arrives, entering through a secure basement entrance. He joins the briefing already in progress. All cases handled by Judge Wells and prosecutor Charlotte Blackwell over the past 5 years need immediate review. he announces after being briefed. "We're re-establishing a special task force to identify patterns of judicial misconduct and prosecutorial overreach." Alexis brings up a slide showing 3 previous military defendants whose careers were destroyed by similar tactics. These individuals were specifically targeted after they noticed irregularities in intelligence handling, she explains. All 3 were women or minorities in special operations roles, Admiral Sullivan adds. All 3 raised concerns about information security that were dismissed as excuses for performance issues. The FBI director nods grimly. "We'll prioritize reviewing these cases." In the evidence room, technicians analyze Miller's phone. His communications reveal a sophisticated network using courthouse security positions to gain access to classified information. Texts to foreign contacts include mission details, personnel rotations, and equipment specifications sold to the highest bidder. He specifically targeted Lieutenant Commander Harper after she flagged unusual access patterns in mission briefings, a technician explains grimly to the lead investigator. Her position as a female Navy SEAL made her both lethal to their operation and easy to dismiss. They were banking on the fact that no one would believe a black woman in uniform if she cried foul. By evening, the crackdown expands like wildfire. FBI teams storm the homes of 12 suspects in synchronized raids. Military police lock down 3 different installations. Evidence teams fill crates with classified files, encrypted laptops, and stacks of financial records that reek of corruption. The Director of National Intelligence arrives at the courthouse, his face pale under the fluorescent lights. "How far up does this go?" he demands. "We've already traced links to a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense," Admiral Sullivan replies. His tone is grave, almost reluctant. "And there are signals this web climbs even higher. But we need more hard proof." Inside the secure command center, Harper updates her live briefing as data floods in from the raids. Surveillance maps glow red with expanding nodes of corruption. This conspiracy thrived by exploiting the cracks between military justice, civilian courts, and intelligence oversight, Harper explains. "Then those cracks need to be sealed, tonight," the DNI responds sharply. As night bleeds into dawn, Harper refuses to slow down. She works shoulder to shoulder with intelligence analysts, her focus razor sharp. Every keystroke, every file reviewed, adds another nail to the coffin of the traitors who thought they could outsmart her. Meanwhile, in a steel holding cell, Miller sits alone, hands clasped, face pale, silence his only weapon left. The fake Captain Reynolds is already spilling secrets, desperate to cut a deal. Judge Wells calls defense attorneys, but every one of them hangs up after hearing the charges. Prosecutor Blackwell's office is sealed off, her career reduced to a crime scene under federal guard. At midnight, Harper finally takes a pause. She sits in the empty courthouse cafeteria, her dress blues slightly rumpled, coffee steaming between her hands. Admiral Sullivan joins her, his voice low but heavy. "You took an enormous risk, Harper. If your beacon hadn't gone off..." Harper cuts him off with calm steel. "It wasn't the only failsafe. I had 3 backup plans." Sullivan studies her with rare admiration. "That's why you're the best, but 18 months undercover knowing every day they had a target on your back?" She lifts the coffee to her lips, eyes burning with quiet fire. "Someone had to stop them. Good operators died because of those leaks. I wasn't about to let their killers walk away." Sullivan leans forward. "The Secretary of Defense wants to see you tomorrow. This conspiracy climbs higher than we imagined." Harper's jaw sets, her determination like tempered steel. "Then we keep climbing until we drag every last one of them into the light." 2 weeks later, Miller and his co-conspirators face judgment inside a sealed military tribunal. No cameras, no public, just the cold weight of justice. Miller, once cocky, now slumps in his prison jumpsuit, hollow-eyed, broken. His lawyer whispers frantically, then stands. "My client wishes to cooperate. He can name bigger players, officials you haven't touched yet." The lead prosecutor doesn't even flinch. The United States already has enough to bury him. Cooperation is optional, not salvation. Miller blurts out, desperation cracking his voice. I was recruited. They told me it was counterintelligence work. They said no one would believe a black woman over men with authority. His trembling eyes flick toward Harper, as if begging for mercy. The prosecutor's voice cuts like a blade. You weren't a soldier doing his duty, Officer Miller. You were a traitor, and for treason you weren't just paid in lies. You were paid in over $2 million of blood money offshore. The room falls into ice-cold silence. Miller's last shield, his excuses, shatters completely. Miller collapses under the weight of evidence. His voice shakes as he confesses, they targeted Harper because her record was too clean, too decorated. She was dangerous to us, and they knew if she raised alarms, nobody would believe a black woman standing against the system. The tribunal members exchange stunned glances. Finally, one leans forward, voice sharp. Who recruited you, Miller? Miller's head hangs low. He whispers a name, a senior Defense Department official. The silence in the courtroom is deafening. Across town, Judge Wells faces the Judicial Conduct Committee. Once hailed as a model jurist, he now looks hollow, broken. The findings are brutal. Gross misconduct, corruption, betrayal. His resignation is forced, his offshore accounts frozen, his name dragged through the mud of disgrace. In another chamber, Prosecutor Blackwell's world crumbles. Before the Bar Association ethics panel, her polished mask falters. I was manipulated, she insists. But the evidence is merciless. Emails, payments, selective prosecutions. Her license is suspended. Disbarment looms. Her career reduced to ashes. The fake Captain Reynolds, now unmasked as Robert Cooper, a disgraced intel analyst, spills everything. We silenced 3 other whistleblowers, real patriots. All they did was try to report breaches through proper channels. His voice shakes with the shame of a man who finally sees the blood on his hands. The tribunal orders those 3 cases reopened, careers restored, lives rebuilt. The announcement echoes like justice returning from the grave. Then breaking news explodes across Washington. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense William Harrington, arrested. 20 years in power, trusted by 2 presidents, now shackled by FBI agents. Charged with espionage, charged with treason. Harper watches the live announcement on a monitor. She doesn't smile, doesn't gloat. Her face is calm steel, the expression of a warrior who knows one battle won does not mean the war is over. Admiral Sullivan approaches quietly. Harrington isn't the top. There's someone higher, someone pulling strings. Harper nods without hesitation. I know. The communication patterns prove it. We're not done. Sullivan exhales. For now, you're due at the Pentagon. They want you in person. 1 month later, the U.S. Capitol. Harper strides into a packed congressional hearing. Cameras flash. C-SPAN broadcasts nationwide. She wears her immaculate dress whites, medals glinting beneath the unforgiving lights. The room falls silent as she sits, back straight, eyes unwavering. The intersection of classified intelligence, military justice, and civilian courts created blind spots, she testifies. Blind spots exploited to destroy lives. She lays down 12 vulnerabilities, systemic flaws that let corruption thrive. Senators squirm as she delivers hard truths without flinching. Are you saying our justice system is biased? One senator challenges. Harper doesn't blink. I'm saying the data proves it. Minority and female personnel face disproportionate scrutiny when they raise concerns. The evidence is in your packets, page 42. Her courage slices through decades of silence. Admiral Sullivan testifies next, reinforcing her findings. Bipartisan agreement forms like a storm front. Reforms must happen now. Headlines erupt. Military Justice Reform Bill clears committee. New oversight division created. Harper is appointed special advisor, working 16-hour days to seal every loophole, restore the discredited, and protect the future. One by one, wrongfully accused operators are reinstated. Public apologies are issued. Cases reopened. Justice restored. Harper's fingerprints are on every reform. Then comes the message, White House, Aero 900, presidential recognition. 6 months later, the White House lawn. Spring sunlight glints off polished brass and white marble. Harper, now Commander Alexis Harper, stands at the Naval Academy podium. Before her, 400 midshipmen, eyes locked, hearts hanging on every word. Your training will prepare you for combat and crisis, she tells them, her voice resonant with authority. But your true test will come when you stand alone, when your integrity is on trial. Character, not rank, not medals, is what decides whether you protect the weak or betray them. The audience includes senators, admirals, and even the justice officials who implemented her reforms. Yet in that moment, the graduating class sees only her, the warrior who fought the system and won. Justice, once shattered, now rebuilt under the watch of a black woman who refused to be silenced. In the front row, the 3 exonerated operators sit as honored guests. Their restored uniforms gleam with pride as Commander Alexis Harper addresses the Naval Academy graduates. In my 15 years of service, she begins, voice steady, I've faced enemy fire, impossible missions, and brutal conditions. But the greatest battle I ever fought wasn't in a combat zone. It was inside our own system. The midshipmen lean forward. Harper doesn't use notes. Every word comes from lived experience. In the field, your enemy is obvious, she continues. But sometimes, the greatest threats hide behind authority, tradition, and the illusion of untouchable power. She recounts how paying attention to patterns others dismissed as coincidence revealed the conspiracy. How documenting every detail became her lifeline. How integrity, not weapons, was her deadliest tool. She pauses, her medals glinting under the sunlight. The Intelligence Personnel Integrity Act, signed into law last month, will give you new protections. But laws are only as strong as the people enforcing them. Your vigilance, your courage, your refusal to be silenced, those matter more than any regulation. After the ceremony, Commander Alexis Harper meets with a small group of female midshipmen eager for advice about special operations. Will it be different for us now because of what you did? One asks. There will still be obstacles, Harper replies honestly. Some from the mission, some from the system, and some from individuals threatened by your presence. But remember this, your excellence is both your armor and your weapon. A quiet cadet raises her hand. How did you stay calm during the courthouse humiliation? I would have been terrified. Harper considers the question, her voice softening. I never forgot who I was and what I stood for. When you know your truth, temporary defeat is just part of a longer mission. Her reforms are already saving lives. 2 similar attempts to manipulate justice have been identified and stopped. Congress hails the new oversight system as a model. Her former attorney, Daniel Green, now serves as special counsel reviewing misconduct across the judiciary. Outside, Harper pauses to watch the midshipmen drilling on the parade ground. Tradition meets the future in every precise step. Captain Lisa Rodriguez joins her. Hard to believe a year ago you were facing prison. Now, you're reshaping the entire system. Harper watches the formation pivot in unison. The system only works when good people refuse to be silenced. Rodriguez smiles. They're already calling it the Harper Doctrine in the Pentagon. Trust, but verify, especially when verification is discouraged. Harper exhales, eyes fixed on the horizon. Let's hope they never forget why it was necessary. As they walk toward the waiting car, Rodriguez hands Harper a folder. The secretary has a new assignment for you. International liaison, helping allied forces adopt similar reforms. Harper accepts it without opening. Tomorrow, she says with quiet strength. Today belongs to those who stood firm when everything seemed lost. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Fate Tales. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new release. At Fate Tales, we highlight moments where silence ends, truth speaks, and history shifts. Join our community of justice seekers, because sometimes the loudest revolutions begin with a single person refusing to bow.